Joining me right now, the guy I had on last week, we've had him on many times, great friend of the show, Tom Basile is here, and he is a conservative commentator. He's an author, and he's also a columnist right here for Newsmax TV. Hey, Tom, how are you today, brother?
Good to see you. You were talking about, that guy on Facebook playing his disco. I'd like to see some pictures of you during your disco days, John. I think people would like to see that.
I might do it. I might do a little. Frank Morano's great at that, at embarrassing me. So, I might, when we get back to the studio, maybe I'll give Frank some throwback pictures and let him show them out. But I was quite the Guido, Tom. I got to tell you.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Was it a breakdancing crew and everything? So, the delegitimization of a president before Election Day I spoke about your column a little earlier with Fernando Uribe, but it does seem like there's a concerted effort underway already to build in a whole bunch of excuses why Trump won.
Yeah, you know what, John? Democrats are really good at this. They plan ahead and they all sing from the same sheet of music, right? They're very, very good at that. Far better than Republicans, actually. And I can see this starting to bubble up. Together with the mainstream media, they want to try and drive fear about people having access to the polls in November, about being able to have these conventions. And then I can just hear Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer in November say, this isn't a real result. That Trump really, this is an illegitimate election because Trump and others did not provide enough accommodation for people who are scared to go out to the polls because of COVID-19, and so this isn't a real election, and they'll do what they did in 2016. Remember, John, in 2016, Trump didn't win, Russia made him win, and then it wasn't Trump didn't win the election because he didn't win the popular vote, and of course, Democrats threw the Constitution right out the window, and I get a sense that because of just how weak Joe Biden is, and the challenges that the Democrats are facing going up against Trump, that they are already starting to try and drive this narrative, or the foundations of what will ultimately be this narrative come November.
Yeah, I don't know if you heard what I was talking about right before you came on, but the other day they had on Joe Biden on Morning Joke, and they had him on with his wife, Dr. Jill Biden.
Yeah.
And it seemed like she was like preempting him. Morning Joke asked him a question, and then she answered right away. Another time he was talking, and she tried to interject, like to stop him from talking. It's really strange. I don't think they trust to even put him out there on his own.
Yeah, Joe Biden is a mere shadow of the person that he used to be, and we've seen some significant changes in him over the last number of years, and it's pretty sad to watch. And it happens on a weekly basis now. This is not just, a gaffe here and there. During the primaries, at least once a week, he forgot where he was. There are times that are floating around the internet, interviews on CNN, on MSNBC, and other places where he's literally stopped mid-sentence. And he has notes in front of him, too. He's stopped mid-sentence and tried to start over again. There was a clip that's been making the rounds of Joe Biden, Jake Tapper, and Sanjay Gupta, and you could see their mouths gaping open as he's trying to find the words to complete the sentence. And I'm concerned. I think that Americans should be concerned that there's an individual out there who just isn't really quite up to it. And frankly, this is what Barack Obama saw. Remember, Barack Obama may have endorsed him finally last week, but Obama had talked to people early on in this process saying that Joe doesn't really have it to go the distance here. And even at one point, it was rumored encouraged him not to run. And again, this is all before, John, the Trump campaign has spent any money really talking to the American people about today's Joe Biden. not necessarily the Joe Biden that you and I remember from the 90s and the 80s, and some would even say the 70s, where he was sort of a middle of the road, kind of presented himself like a common sense Democrat. But today's Joe Biden's far different, and he's now sort of wrapped himself in the left wing of his party. So this going back to my previous point about why the Democrats are laying foundation for the excuse narrative, because they're very concerned about the vitality of the Biden candidacy.
Yeah, isn't it almost, I kind of, well, I kind of look at it like they know they're losing this one. They're floating Joe out there like a sacrificial lamb, and they're already strategizing for 4 more years. They couldn't let Bernie win. And to your earlier point, Tom, you're right. Obama didn't endorse Joe until there were no more candidates left.
Right.
he had
there's
no
a last
choice.
man standing. Yeah, there's a last man standing aspect of the Biden candidacy, and we know that Warren isn't thrilled about this, and we know that the Bernie bros are not thrilled about this. So it's a significant problem. I was on Newsmax a couple of weeks ago with a former Biden advisor who completely went nuts when I happened to mention to him a poll that was floated in Florida during the Democratic primary, where even 10% of the Florida Democratic primary voters said that they're still voting for Donald Trump in the November election. And when you go into a general election campaign where he has not been attacked in any real sense, there is no real campaign right now. Donald Trump has not spent his war chest redefining and educating the American public about Joe Biden. And you're going into the situation locked in your basement, ordering Chinese takeout, in a darkened room, sniping from the sidelines of a national emergency, and barely being able to put together a coherent sentence. It's not a good situation for the Democrats. And I want to say something, John, just so that we're being fair, okay? I think it's very important that we're fair and we're honest about this. The president has some issues that he's got to deal with in order to survive this campaign. His numbers in the suburbs, his numbers in suburban areas and swing states, and his numbers with independents and women, those are numbers that need to move in a positive direction in order for him to come out of this ahead in November.
Yeah, when I'm looking at this campaign, I don't know what you were doing this weekend, but I spent a good portion of my day this weekend watching old boxing matches. I don't know if you saw, ESPN had a whole day of like the best bouts of all time. And one of them, I'm a boxing aficionado for years and years now. And one of the fights, they ran like 4 or 5 Tyson fights, and one of them was Tyson-Larry Holmes, and Larry Holmes was, was a distinguished champion. He was a respected guy. Made a comeback at the end of his career and tried to challenge Tyson when he was like 39 years old. Tyson was like 21. And even though I know the outcome of the fight, it was like painful to watch because I kind of liked Larry Holmes as a champion. He carried himself well. He was a longtime champion. He respected like Muhammad Ali. And, Tyson just topples the guy because it was like a mismatch. It was like a no contest. And it was reminding me like, this is Tyson Holmes is Trump Biden.
Yeah, look, John, this is, but this isn't a fight, right? I mean, this is people's lives depend on the direction of our government, and this is a very serious thing. And when we have a Democratic nominee who is either not in control of his faculties or not in control of his own campaign, and I think that there are arguments to be made on both those fronts, that's very significant. And there are a lot of people who dislike Trump enough, particularly his style, maybe not even his policies, but his style enough where they may say, Joe Biden's a moderate. He's a moderate. He's okay. He's not one of these crazy AOC people. They have to understand that this is a very different Joe Biden than the one that they may have remembered from 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago. This is going to be a very serious, this needs to be a very seriously thought through decision on the part of particularly independents and those suburban voters who right now, they're the ones in the polls that are saying that they're not thrilled with Donald Trump.
Yeah, and just to throw some more wood on that fire, even going back 25 years ago, think about some smart person in the Trump campaign under Brad Parscale or someone, right? Think about this, video or this ad, okay? You got Joe Biden in 1994, okay? He passed the bill, the Crime Act, that put some say in the minority communities, unfairly and disproportionate amounts of minorities in jail for nonviolent drug crimes. So you got Joe Biden bragging that I passed that bill. That was me, guy. And at the same time, the misogynist in chief, as the left wants to call him, is sitting there with Kanye West and others figuring out how to reverse that and let those unfairly persecuted people out of jail early. So they're banking on this whole African-American, hey, wait, let me think about this for a minute. Biden made this bill that sent all of our friends and cousins and family into jail, and Trump started letting them out. It's going to be a tough thing to deal with even the minority communities.
Yeah, look, because the president is focused on an opportunity agenda. The Democrats aren't focused on that. The Democrats are focused on bigger government, bigger programs, more free stuff, right? And I'm sorry, Trump gets, with Biden being the nominee, Trump gets to run for president again as the outsider. I mean, Joe Biden has been in Washington for 50 years. Suddenly, the guy who has been in public life, in public office for 50 years was vice president for 8, is suddenly going to make the case to the American people. Oh yeah, but now I'm going to solve these problems. Now I'm going to actually hate communities of color. Yeah, now I'm actually going to show you that I care about advancing people, up the ladder from poverty into the middle class, and it's going to be a very tough. I think that's going to be a tough case to make, and I think that the president, if the economy rebounds, is positioned to get. He's not going to get huge numbers of the black community, but I think that he will get a significant number of black and Latino votes relative to what Republicans typically do, because of the fact that he is focused on tax cuts that these people have realized because of Trump, rolling back regulations that prevented folks from getting jobs, criminal justice reform that you referred to, and an opportunity agenda that's focused on people building their own path forward, rather than what Biden did last week, which is come out with Elizabeth Warren's free college entitlement program that, frankly, most middle-class Americans are not going to be able to qualify for. That's really a nod to try and convince blacks and Latinos to come out and vote for him.
Of course. And just on that note, funny thing here in New York, right? A few months ago, I guess the New York State legislatures, were trying to pass free health care for illegal immigrants, right?
Yeah.
And Cuomo's on the record, ad infinitum, saying how, hey, we got plenty of money and we got plenty of capacity and we're a great country. We're supposed to be taking care of people, right? This was just months ago. You're saying we got plenty of hospitalization, plenty of health care here in New York. We're good. We're fine. We should be able to give all these people free health insurance. And now he's sitting there saying, I'm broke. We don't got a dime. Well, hospitals, we need money. We need money for state and local. So it's going to be hard for him to change his tune a few months from now and say, well, we have extra money to give health care to illegals, when he's sitting here now saying we can't even help our own people who belong here. So,
Yeah, but John, what Cuomo's game really is look, you know that during the time that Cuomo has been governor, he increased the budget in the state of New York by $40 billion. He came into 2020 with a multi-billion-dollar budget deficit, and then approved or proposed a budget that was $1 to $2 billion more than that. And now what he wants is the federal taxpayers in North Carolina and Texas and Florida and Kansas to come in and bail him out. New York has the most bloated, inefficient government in the country, that is presently controlled by far left Democrats from New York City, and they didn't make the investments in healthcare, and they didn't have the stockpile prepared for this pandemic. They were totally unprepared. But now his game is, I'm really going to put the screws to the Congress and to Pelosi and the congressional delegation and to Trump to try and get as much money as I can to fill my budget gap. And you're going to see that happening in New Jersey. You're going to see Ned Lamont coming out and asking for more money. All of these blue state Democrat governors who have states that have massive financial problems are now going to want a federal bailout. And, for the folks watching, let's just remember that this is the same Andrew Cuomo who said that conservatives had no place in the state of New York and that America wasn't all that great to begin with just a couple of years ago. So we've got to be, that's going to be the big political football coming up, John. And you're going to see the mainstream press scream and yell at the Trump administration on the side of the likes of Cuomo here very soon.
Yeah, and you know what, Tom? Me and you got to talk offline about maybe collaborating on a great column, or it affects almost every state. 70% of the public employee retirement systems in the country are underfunded right now.
Yeah.
And when you talk about Cuomo passing these crazy budgets with $1 or $2 billion, they use a tricky little scheme here in New York where they borrow from Peter to pay Paul. And when we have those deficits, they actually snivel the money out of the public employee retirement system and put a little entitlement chip in there that says, hey, we're going to get you guys on the other side. When you retire, you're good. And one wrong move, and one public employee retirement system like New York has a few more people than their actuarial table assumed asking for their money at the same time, the whole thing could collapse. And that's where all the deficit spending is coming from. They're taking it out of the retirement systems.
And John, let me give you one more, okay? What about if Andrew Cuomo, who now wants billions and billions and billions of federal tax dollars to bail him out, imagine if Andrew Cuomo was not bought and paid for by the public employees unions, and when he took office, he said, you know what, we're going to reform Medicaid, and we're going to save $10 billion there, and we're going to go from defined benefit to defined contribution on those pension programs. Think about the amount of money that would have been saved, that taxpayers would have saved. Think about how much more right size the budget would be in New York if he had just done those two things. But he has never been interested in spending less money. He always wants to spend more. And now, and this is particularly insidious, now he wants the American taxpayer to come in and solve his problem. And we've got to be very, very careful. I'm not saying New York shouldn't get aid. It should get aid. But we've got to be very, very careful of what that aid is being used for. It can't be unrestricted money, and there has to be some common sense into how much money states like New York, blue states, deep blue states with their spendthrift attitudes, get from any kind of federal bailout.
No doubt. And us New Yorkers, we know firsthand when Andrew Cuomo gets his hands on some economic development money with no strings attached, like the Buffalo Billions projects, a whole bunch of that dough winds up in the pockets of his right-hand man. And, his underboss, Joe Percoco, who is now sitting in the slammer for all the fraud that went on there. So yeah, I think we should keep an eye on whatever money Andrew Cuomo gets, because he doesn't have a great track record of spending it properly. It often winds up in the hands of his friends and big donors.
Yep. Yep.
So,
You're absolutely right.
So, Tom, I want to thank you very much for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Always a pleasure, John.
And let's me and you keep in touch. Hopefully, we'll check in again next week or something.
You got it.
Thank you very much. That's
Thank
Tom
you.
Basile, and Tom is a great friend of the show.